Today, we're going to talk about something that's really hard to see but causes an incredible amount of damage: parental alienation. It's a kind of hidden abuse, and honestly, bringing it into the light is the first step to protecting the children and families it devastates. So let's start with the question that sits right at the heart of this whole issue.
I mean, just think about it. It's a completely baffling and frankly heartbreaking situation. A child who was once close and loving suddenly becomes cold, hostile, and wants nothing to do with a parent, seemingly out of nowhere. To understand how something like this can happen, we need to dig into what the science and the law actually tell us.
So, here's our plan. First, we'll nail down exactly what parental alienation is. Then, we'll look at the hard scientific proof of the psychological harm it causes. After that, we'll see how the law is set up to protect kids. And finally, we'll lay out a roadmap for what can be done to fix it. Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics. Before we can even talk about solutions, we have to be crystal clear on what parental alienation is, and, maybe just as important, what it isn't.
Now, this isn't just some buzzword for a nasty divorce. It's a recognized issue by organizations like the American Psychological Association. And look at the key word in that definition: manipulated. We are talking about a deliberate, calculated process of psychological control that poisons a child's mind against a perfectly good parent. It's not the child's own idea.
And this brings us to a really critical distinction. Parental alienation is not the same thing as what we call justifiable estrangement. See, estrangement is when a child pulls away from a parent for a good reason, because of that parent's actual abuse or neglect. That's a healthy, protective reaction. Alienation is the total opposite. The rejection is completely unjustified. It's manufactured. And if you listen to the child's reasons, they often sound flimsy or vague, almost like they're just repeating a script they heard from the other parent.
And this manipulation isn't a one-time thing. It's a relentless campaign. It can be anything from constantly bad-mouthing the targeted parent to blocking calls and visits, making up false accusations, or even trying to literally erase them from the child's life by hiding photos and keepsakes. It puts the child in this impossible loyalty bind, where they're made to feel that loving both parents is some kind of betrayal.
So, what's the actual damage here? Well, this behavior inflicts a deep, invisible injury. But this harm isn't just some abstract idea, it's a measurable scientific reality with consequences that can follow a child for their entire life.
The research community doesn't mince words about this. The consensus is clear. Parental alienation is a severe form of emotional abuse. And get this, it annihilates, that's the word they use, it annihilates a child's ability to give and receive love from one of their parents. It just wipes it out.
And the long-term effects are just devastating. When you look at adults who went through this as kids, the numbers are absolutely staggering. 55% of them end up suffering from clinical depression and anxiety. More than half.
It's the exact same number for substance abuse, 55%. They struggle with addiction, often as a way to try and numb the pain that started way back in their childhood.
And this is probably the most terrifying statistic of all. The psychological torment is so intense that 30%, nearly a third, experience suicidal thoughts. This isn't just harmful, it is life-threatening. But the cycle of trauma doesn't even stop there. 50%, half of these adults, report that they end up becoming alienated from their own children. This is how the damage gets passed down from one generation to the next. It's a massive societal problem, and we have to pay attention.
So the takeaway from all this data is really simple and really stark. This is not just a parenting dispute. This is a well-documented form of child abuse, plain and simple, and it has permanent, life-altering consequences.
So if the harm is this bad, what on earth can be done about it? Well, the good news is the legal system actually has a framework specifically designed to step in and protect children from this kind of abuse.
In legal systems like Canada's, for example, every single decision a family court makes has to be guided by one main principle: what is in the best interests of the child? And let's be real, deliberately destroying a child's healthy, loving relationship with a parent is the exact opposite of that. It's direct psychological harm.
And the law gets really specific about this. It's not just a vague idea. In Canada, the Divorce Act explicitly tells judges they have to consider how willing each parent is to support the child's relationship with the other parent. An alienating parent, by definition, fails this test completely, which gives the court a clear mandate to take action.
And this, right here, is a huge shift in legal thinking.
Courts are finally moving past seeing this as just another custody squabble. They are increasingly calling severe alienation what it actually is: emotional child abuse and a form of family violence. That classification elevates the whole issue to a matter of child protection, and that demands a much stronger response from the courts.
So what does that response actually look like? How do courts intervene in practice? Let's check out the roadmap to resolution, the real-world tools that are used to stop the abuse and help families start to heal.
You can think of it like a spectrum of responses. For milder cases, a court might start with corrective orders or mandating a special kind of family therapy called reunification therapy. But for the really severe, stubborn cases of abuse, courts are now using much more drastic measures, like completely reversing custody, or even ordering a temporary no-contact period with the alienating parent, just to give the child some breathing room to heal.
And it's so important to understand the goal here. These major interventions aren't about punishing the parent. They're about protecting the child. The best analogy is setting a broken bone. It's a serious medical procedure, and it can be painful, but it's absolutely necessary to stop the damage from getting worse and to allow the psychological injury to finally start healing the right way.
If you take away just one single thing from all of this, let it be this: time is the enemy. The longer this type of abuse is allowed to go on, the deeper the child's rejection becomes, and the harder and harder it is to ever repair that broken relationship. And that's exactly why public awareness and early intervention are so incredibly critical.
So here's the bottom line. The science is clear. The legal framework is there. Parental alienation is a recognized, serious form of child abuse with devastating, lifelong consequences. So the question for all of us is no longer what it is. The question now is, what are we, as a society, going to do about it?